Year by year, you've heard that Italian tax deadline is July 31st or the end of June. You put a big circle on your calendar and you think, I just have to do my taxes and pay everything by this one day. You feel confident, you feel you handle it correctly. But what if I told you that believing there is only one tax deadline in Italy is one of the most dangerous assumptions out there you can make? What if I told you that the reality is far more complex, with multiple deadlines for different things, and that confusing them can lead to massive penalties? This video is not just about paying your taxes, it's about knowing when and what to do. Let's start with the fundamental problem. A tax deadline is just one thing. In Italy, there are two different types of deadlines you must know: the declaration deadline and the payment deadlines. The declaration deadline is the most important then. This is the last day you can officially file your tax return or dichiarazione dei redditi with the Italian tax agency. By filing, you're telling the government everything they need to know: your income, your expenses, your foreign assets, and so on. This is the day you take control and provide all the information. The payment deadlines, on the other hand, are the dates you must pay the taxes that were calculated on your declaration. And this is where it gets confusing, because there is not just one payment deadline. There are usually a couple in payments. The first installment, or primo acconto, which is due in the summer, and the second installment, or saldo and secondo acconto, which is due in the autumn. So, the first big mistake people make is believing that the declaration and the payment deadlines are the same. They are not. The second big mistake is not realizing that there are several payment deadlines, not just one. And the most terrifying mistake is that they often use old or incorrect information they find online, believing it to be a simple universal truth. But the deadlines change. The rules are not simple as, Google search result might suggest. Let's take an example. Let's meet Marco. Marco is a freelance photographer who just moved to Italy, and he heard from a friend that the deadline is the end of June. He puts it in his calendar. He files his tax return and pays taxes by the end of June. He thinks, great, I'm done for this year. But Marco is very, very wrong. The deadline his friend told me about was about the payment deadline for the first installment, for the balance. The official deadline for this declaration might be in October or November too. Because yes, Marco paid on time. He thinks everything is in order, but he made a huge and very dangerous mistake. He never actually filed his tax return by the official declaration deadline. So the Italian tax agency will send him a penalty notice for the late payment, but not for failing a tax return at all. And the penalty for a late or unfiled declaration is much, much higher than a late payment. A late payment might just have a small interest charge. An unfiled declaration can lead to massive fines and audit from the tax office. So Marco's mistakes of confusing one deadline for another was put his entire financial situation at risk. Now, let's look at a common and equally expensive scenario. Let's meet Sara and her husband. They are a couple who moved to Italy from the US. They hire a local commercialista to do their taxes. The advisor files their tax return on time, which is a great first step, okay? Don't get me wrong. The advisor then gives them a summary of the taxes owed, and the deadline is, in this case, let's say July 31st. They pay the full amount on that date. They think, that's it. My taxes are done for the year, nothing new. But they're very, very wrong. The advisor only told them about the first payment deadline. They completely forgot to mention that the second payment deadline, which is typically in November. The second payment, called saldo and secondo acconto, is a big one. It includes the remaining balance in previous taxes year, plus a payment for the next year's taxes, a down payment, if you want, for the current year. Sarah and her husband missed the November deadline completely, and a few months later, they receive a letter from the Italian tax agency. They're being charged a penalty for the late payment because they missed the second deadline. Their bill was now grown with penalties and interest. They assumed one payment was enough. They assumed one deadline was the end. But in the Italian tax system, the deadlines are not just one single event, they're a series of events. A simple mistake can cost them thousands of euros. So what's the lesson here? The Italian tax system does not operate on a single simple deadline. There are different deadlines for different things, for declaration and for the payments. Trusting what you read on a simple Google search or what a friend tells you is a very dangerous game. The deadlines are specific and they can change year from year.
At Studio Rigo, we provide tax and strategic guidance for those navigating international complexity with significant interests in Italy. We work quietly, precisely, and always with the long term in mind. If you expect nothing less than clarity and control, you'll know where to find us. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.